Hello everyone, and welcome back to Risk of Rain. It's been a while, but we're back, and you guys voted. A long time ago. So we're going into the monsoon with the last class of the game, the mercenary. So here we are, the last class of the game that you would probably unlock. This class is extremely unique. This class is a melee fighter. He fights with a laser sword of sorts. But the difference between him and every other melee fighter is that he is a combination character. He's even more squishy than the miner, and in comparison to Handy and Acrid, he has no ability to sustain himself whatsoever. This character I consider to be one of the best classes of the game, but at the same time I also consider him to be the absolute 100% hardest to play. Let's just start off by explaining his attacks. We'll start off with his Zed. The laser sword. It deals 130% of his base damage and slashes directly in front of him, but unlike the miner and Handy's basic attack, it does not pierce every enemy in front of him. Unlike Acrid's, it doesn't just hit one. It actually hits up to 3. This can cause him some mild issues, but is also a bit of a benefit. Next up is Whirlwind. Whirlwind is a double attack, dealing 80% of the mercenary's base damage in two strikes, therefore a total of 160%. It also boosts him into the air ever so slightly, and does actually hit everything in its hitbox, which is actually much larger than it looks. After that we have Blinding Assault. Blinding Assault is the basic mechanic of this character. I'm just going to go over quickly what it does here. You dash forward, you're invulnerable while doing so, and anything caught within the dash has 120% of your base damage done to it. If you hit anything with Blinding Assault, then you can use Blinding Assault again. If you hit anything with it the second time, you can use it again, but then it will inevitably cool down for 6 seconds. Finally, we have Eviscerate. Eviscerate, it hits the nearest enemy for 110% of the mercenary's base damage 6 times. If the enemy dies in the process, it will target the next nearest enemy there afterwards. You are completely invulnerable for the process of this entire thing, and it will home in on whichever one is closest to you. As such, this is, again, one of the more useful attacks that this character has. It is his primary way of dealing single target damage. Imagine it as sort of a version of the Commando's B attack. So now that we're done with that, I'm going to explain what I meant by this character being difficult to play. He's very unintuitive. You get the idea from looking at his stuff that he's sort of meant to be a combo character, or someone like to the miner. The truth is that this character actually has a remarkable amount of sustained damage if you can manage to do it properly. And that's what we're going to be going over today. Now, the mercenary is a multi-hitting character, so therefore his items that are very kind to him are the same as they are with the commando. Some things like the Brilliant Behemoth, which I managed to get as my first item this time around. And I do want to note, before we really get started here, I'm not particularly great with this character. I'm actually remarkably bad, I would say. I guess for my own standards. So, to start off with, this character has relatively low damage, actually. He doesn't actually do very good damage just based on his base stats. But what he does do is a lot of hits very quickly, and having a decent amount of time that he can do them in without being able to be hit. The character is a bit of a combo character, unlike the miner, who, as I said before, is not actually that good at combos. This character actually is, due to the fact that Blinding Assault can be used 3 times in a row, but there is a certain amount of time after hitting something with it that you can just wait, and then you can use it again, and then you can wait and use it again, or, more accurately, don't wait, hit them. Now, this is where Eviscerate comes in. Because, for me, Eviscerate is part of the combo. There's a lot of people that say that a standard combo for the Miner would be to Eviscerate, Whirlwind into the bunch of them, and then Blinding Assault 3 times, and then get out. I don't believe that's true. I believe that the way to use this character is to get in, usually with a Blinding Assault. Use Whirlwind, preferably jump before you do so, because the stun from Blinding Assault is not very long. And then come back down, Blinding Assault again, use Eviscerate, and then Blinding Assault then Blinding Assault again, and by that point, Eviscerate actually makes you invulnerable for so long that Whirlwind will cool down in the meantime. And so then, after your third Blinding Assault, you can jump and Whirlwind to get yourself out of there. Then you can essentially do whatever you wish while you wait for Blinding Assault to cool down. This actually winds up dealing much, much more damage than serrating in and just Blinding Assaulting 3 times after a Whirlwind. But the thing is that is a staple combo. That is something that you can use when it's appropriate. The thing is that not always will the same combination of attacks be appropriate, and that is where this character's bit of unintuition comes in, is that you have to adapt your combos on the fly to the situation that you're in. Therefore, sometimes Eviscerating in and just Blinding Assaulting 3 times and getting the hell out of there is actually a really wise decision. For example, what I wound up realizing is what one of this character's primary enemies is the Rock Golem. Because the thing is that most other things can be stunned by Whirlwind. The Rock Golem can't, and the little jump boost that you get will actually not get you outside of his hitbox. I died many times to the Rock Golem when I first played this character, due to the fact that I didn't quite understand that is why you have to jump before you use Whirlwind. Almost always. Just to keep yourself safe. Now, the other thing is Eviscerate itself. Eviscerate is an excellent attack. It does way too much damage for what it does. It actually is, in my opinion, one of the best moves in the game for any given character. If another melee class, like, say, the Miner, had this thing, they would be much better just based on the fact that they had it alone. The other sort of thing to him is the fact that you have to make sure to use Blinding Assault. Blinding Assault, first off, because of its long cooldown period, it seems like something that should be used sparingly, but it is seriously your only method of keeping yourself safe in a crowd control situation. It's really remarkably bad at doing single target damage. It does less damage than Laser Sword or Whirlwind does, and much, much less than Eviscerate. And as such, it should be used only in situations where there is a crowd to deal with. As you can see right now, as I'm dealing with this guy here, I don't use Blinding Assault on him at all. Because for all I know, there's about to be like a horde of mechanical spiders that would spawn in right behind me. That is the thing with this character, is you really have to know how to keep yourself from getting hit. And this is where we get to the next bit of him. Knowing your enemy's attack patterns. This is the same thing I went over with the Miner before, that the Miner has to know when he's about to be hit in order to use his attacks properly. This is why you have to keep an eye on the crowds that you're dealing with this character, because if there's, say, mechanical spiders in there, you know that the ground is not very safe. But at the same time, if there's snow golems in there, then you know that the air isn't particularly safe either, because their hitbox is huge. Oddly enough, this is also one of the few characters where they have a really easy time dealing with Black Imps and no, just Black Imps, actually. They just have a really easy time dealing with Black Imps. I was about to say Claymen, but actually no. They have a bit of trouble with Claymen due to the fact that Claymen have a remarkably fast attack. and sometimes you can have some problems where directly after a blinding assault, before you even get the chance to do anything afterwards, just a Clayman just hits you, because he does. Now I'm going to get to why I have an issue with this character, particularly in Monsoon difficulty, and that's blighted enemies. The thing is that this character is good at doing single target damage, but not when there's a crowd around what he has to kill. Eviscerate will target whatever is closest to you, not whatever is most threatening, like the sniper's spotter. So it's sometimes difficult to actually hit what you want to with it. And this is the reason why Monsoon is such a tough thing for this character, is that you want to hit the Blight. You always want to hit the Blight. But sometimes you activate your Eviscerate and it targets some random thing in the crowd. This is why I'm very glad that I got the Brilliant Behemoth as the very first item in this successful run, because that thing is incredibly helpful for crowd control situations. And right now, I want to take a second to note what I'm doing right there. Another important part of this character is knowing when to run, what's worth it and what's not. And right there, staying around in that crowd was simply not worth it, and ow. Ow, 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 ow. This is another thing that I got early, was an infusion, which is actually great for this character, because his staple low stats just make it so that things that will increase your base health, things that will increase your base damage, anything like that is even more valuable to this character than it is to others. But now that we're done with that, I'm going to get to what's going on in the run at the time. You might have noticed a little while ago that I had 3 items to choose from, and I went for a life savings. I admittedly got another one afterwards, but I went for a life savings that time. That's because early in the game, if you can get something like life savings or smart shopper, I recommend doing it. Because the more items you can get, the better. And there's nothing worse than being, like, off finding the teleporter, coming across a chest, and being, like, 4 gold away. So you have to go and wait for for something to spawn in. Instead, you just wait for like 12 seconds, get the thing, and run. And then another thing is that I got a charge field generator early on. And I think that I've mentioned before that I love this item. But for a character class like the mercenary here, it's even more valuable due to the fact that not only are you consistently in close quarters combat, if you're doing your stuff right, but it just genuinely increases the damage of your combo. And if your combo does not quite do the damage, then while you're running away, there's a distinct possibility that the charge field generators just being there will wind up killing the things for you. Now, another thing that's kind of weird is how it is that I did this teleporter sequence. You might have noticed that I just sort of jumped. That I just ran afterwards and jumped off the hole in the bridge to make it down here. And that's pretty much due to the fact that right now I don't feel confident in what I have, and I know that there's stuff on the way back to the teleporter that will be exceptionally valuable. And so, therefore, I made the decision to just jump down here, have everything spawn down here, spread it out somewhat so that I would have less gigantic crowds to deal with, and just kind of maintain my position afterwards. So that's why I'm just sort of camping in here, is I'm getting everything to spawn in a generally speaking the same place, and just trying to kill them all off utilizing Whirlwind and Blinding Assault. And this does something, I'll say. Another thing is that the use item that I currently have, the shield generator, is not the best for this class at all. With this class, you don't actually even want to stay in the fray all of the time. You want to combo and get out. Your laser sword does not deal enough damage to really wind up mattering. And so it was essentially the only pick that I had, and as you can see, like, right now, I'm not dealing very much damage to this guy while I'm just standing right in front of him, just beating the hell out of him with my basic attack, because my other attacks all have gigantic cooldowns. Also, I just used Blinding Assault 3 times in a row. That's pretty much due to the fact that this is a blighted enemy, and I know that I'm not going to take him out for a lengthy period of time, so I'm just utilizing all of the things that I have to my advantage. Ow. That's part of the reason why I actually don't like the mercenary. I personally am someone who enjoys tanky characters, and considering that my favorite class is handy, I'm sure that's not very surprising. But the squishiness of this character can make it so that sometimes you're alive and doing fine, and then suddenly 3 things hit you and you're dead. Now, another thing here is that I did get a bitter root earlier on, and that combined with the infusion can actually be exceptionally useful. But the one thing that I got early on that I don't like, I picked it up because technically speaking it's a benefit, but sometimes it can just backfire, and I'm sure that I don't even have to explain as to why, but I will anyways. The boxing glove. Melee characters and the boxing glove. It's like peanut butter and molasses. It just doesn't work out well. Because you wind up smacking something and you're like, okay, I'm in the crowd, I'm doing my combo. This one enemy just abruptly flew the hell over there, and great, now I can't do anything to him. So now I'm gonna have to run away, and he's gonna have like a completely different health total than everything else in that crowd, and it's all because of this one item. Don't like the boxing glove for melee characters, because it's just unreliable as fuck. Now, one thing that I noticed, actually just kind of newly, by fighting our little buddy Ifrit over there, Ifrit doesn't do much damage. He actually really doesn't. And I didn't notice that before. But now that I was like against him right there, I just wound up noticing that his actual damage of his attack is pretty pathetic. He's actually relatively easy to deal with if there's no other crowd around him. Now, right there, we did get a Rusty Blade, and a Rusty Blade is great for this character, for the exact same reason it's great for the Commando. It just absolutely, and we just got an ATG as well, it just helps him so much with his damage because of how many times he can get it to go off with Eviscerate, or with Whirlwind. And it can just increase your general combo damage, and that's, in the end, what you want with this character. We also, while we were there, got 4 drones. And I want to go over drones with this character right now, because, in my opinion, this character has the single worst drone interaction of any class in the game. What I mean by that is that I've said before that the drone stats are based upon your own. So their health is based upon yours. Their regen is based upon yours. Their damage is based upon yours. And your damage, regen, and health as the mercenary all fucking suck. So, in the end, your drones wind up sucking because of that. And due to that, and the other thing being that you are frequently in the fray as the mercenary, you'll wind up dodging attacks that your drones will actually take on the chin. And as such, they just wind up dying. A lot. And fortunately enough, I managed to evade that this time around because I had the infusion. If I didn't have the infusion, there's a distinct possibility I wouldn't have even bothered picking up any of the drones aside from the laser drone. That said, I'd say to pick them up anyways when you yourself are playing, because the amount of damage they can block is still worth it to have around. Just don't always repair them, because sometimes it just will not be worth the amount of money that it gets up to. Now, as I'm sure those of you that play this game know, we're in Update 1.1.1 right now. And Update 1.1.1's bugs fixes were actually not listed. They apparently lost the fix log. But I think they may have fixed the Imp Overlord's tentacle a little bit. Because this guy seems to be following a lot better than he used to. I still think there's an issue with him in the Providence fight, because the thing about the Providence fight is that it instantly despawns all enemies, and I think he may actually register as an enemy, as far as that's concerned. Not sure why, but essentially, the thing's fixed, mostly. But we got the Cremator. And this is why I brought up the drone thing. Cremator versus the mercenary. As with almost every other class in the game, particularly melee classes, the Cremator is the worst boss. It is just terrible. You can't do shit to it. But I'm going to do something kind of weird here. One thing that I wound up learning is that since your drones focus down on whatever's closest to them, they will usually, particularly on this map, because there's only one type of enemy that's actually tall enough to make them shorter than your jump height, is to jump every time that the Cremator is going to attack you and try and remain on top of him. What I'm actually doing right now is I'm trying to get just a little bit of damage on him by killing these things off that are spawning around me and just hitting him with the charge field generator. Just allowing that thing to deal just like little bits and pieces of damage while jumping or dodging every time that one of his things like that are coming in on me. Because the thing is that the projectiles, when they're in the air, they lose their hitbox if they hit anything. Meanwhile, when they hit down, that does not have a lost hitbox of any sort. It just hits anything that's within the area. And as such, I was actually able to endure that Cremator spawn much more easily than I would have been able to if I had no drones at all. And that's what I kind of consider drones to be the primary advantage of drones for the mercenary, is the fact that they allow him to keep a distance, for one, but also they allow him to absorb more damage than he would usually be able to, and allow you to be a little bit more reckless while you're at it. Now, another thing we got was the Sprouting Egg. And the Sprouting Egg, to me, is actually one of the better items, particularly for the Mercenary. Because the thing about the Mercenary is that you make your combo and you get out. That's how you work a lot of the time. And getting out and being able to heal while you are out is much more effective. Now, I'm going to say one thing right here for those of you watching the shorter episodes. This is how I'm going to be doing this from here on out. We're going to be splitting the video into every now and then. We're going to be splitting the video in two, but I'll also be posting the whole thing. So this is where it'll split here. See you in a bit.